Welcome to the School of the Word on the superiority of the New Covenant. There are many sessions. I'm going to come at this sequentially. I'm going to come at it from a variety of angles. I'm going to build precept upon precept and line upon line. There are going to be a host of verses that we can discuss and beyond what we can discuss that I will give as reference or passing reference to. But I want to start with this passage. Actually, before that passage, I just want to get to the root of what the word gospel means. Gospel is, we hear that word and it's kind of it's Christianese, gospel. It's unique apparently to the church, but it's really not unique to the church. The word gospel is the Greek word evangelion. It's where we get the word evangelist, because evangelists are the ones that share the good news. But in Old English, it was got spell, good news. And so what an evangelist does in sharing the good news is, because their name and designation and function comes from the very Greek word that was translated in Old English into gospel, meaning good news. So when the angels showed up in the skies of Bethlehem and said, "Behold, I bring you glad tidings of great joy." That word, glad tidings, in King James, other translations say good news of great joy. And that glad tidings and that good news is the Greek evangelion. That is the beginning of the story of Jesus on the earth. And it was the gospel encapsulated in that passage is glad tidings of great joy. Because God is announcing peace on earth, goodwill toward men with whom He is pleased. And right off the bat, we have to understand that God is already messing with our religious, legalistic disposition, because He's already saying He's pleased and the cross hasn't even happened yet. He's already saying goodwill and the cross hasn't even happened yet. He's already saying peace and the cross hasn't even happened yet. Now, all of that is prophetic of the mechanism by which all of that will come. But in our kind of popular conception, we have an angry God ready to slay men with whom He is displeased, rather than a rescue plan before the foundations of the world motivated by great love. And so the first announcement in the skies over Bethlehem is, this is good news, and everyone's going to get happy out of this. Because God likes you, He's going to save you. There's going to be, where you're enemies right now, you're about to be made friends of God. He's going to make peace with His enemies. He's going to ransom and save you. And this little child, Emmanuel, God with us, is who's going to bring it to pass. Paul to the Colossians talked about the hope laid up for you in heaven. He said, "Of this you have heard before in the word of the truth, the gospel." The word of the truth, the good news, which has come to you as indeed it is in the whole world, bearing fruit and increasing since the day you heard it and understood the grace of God in truth. Now I want you to correlate two things there. The word of the truth is the good news. That's what it says. You've heard before in the word of the truth, the gospel, but then we come to understand this by the grace of God in truth. So these three concepts, the truth, the good news, and grace. The truth, the gospel, and grace are all fundamentally intertwined. One leaning on the other, one reinforcing the other, one explaining the other. You can't preach the truth of the gospel without grace. You can't preach the gospel of grace without the truth. You can't preach the truth of grace without it being good news. If any one of those things are at a deficit. It's a two-legged stool and it's going to fall over. It's a three-legged stool that is founded on truth. It's all about grace, and that truth about grace is good news. So we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of His will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. You have to move in the knowledge of God to get the comprehension of the truth of the gospel of grace. And when you do, it unpacks riches inside of you, producing good fruit and further deepening your knowledge of God. It's a virtuous circle that the Holy Spirit loves to do. It's going to happen in this room, in session after session. Things are going to peel off of you. Your eyes are going to be opened. Riches are going to be unlocked. And the very process of that is going to produce good fruit and make you more hungry for more understanding. The scholar Robert Mount said the New Testament speaks of the gospel in a way that describes its benefits. It is the gospel of God's grace, Acts 20:24. It is the gospel of salvation, Ephesians 1:13. It is the gospel of peace, Ephesians 6:19. And the gospel that holds out hope, Colossians 1:23. Over and over, Mark 8:35, 10:29, and Acts 20:24-25. The gospel is worth dying for. This is not just an option to us. It is so precious, it is so powerful, it is so potent, it's worth dying for. Evangelion was not invented by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, however. That Greek word was already commonly in use in the Roman world. It wasn't a religious word. It was a secular word used to announce the birth of an emperor or the coming of an emperor to a city after conquest. The announcement of glad tidings had to do with a birthday, a rise to power, or a particular degree by an emperor that heralded the fulfillment of the possibility of peace or goodness in the world. Mark grabs hold of it and redefines it as applying to the good news, the evangelion, the announcement of a new emperor, swathed in swaddling clothes, laying as a baby in a manger, but that one is going to change everything. Proper perception and reception of the gospel of truth requires proper definition. I'm just building up. I'm going to save some of my better bombs for later, all right? But I'm just building up right now because I want to lay a foundation for why this matters. If we are to perceive and receive the gospel of truth, we have to have it properly defined. And actually, this is what it means to evangelize. Not just to simply or boldly witness or share Jesus with others. We have reduced evangelism to that. And that's beautiful. It's a good, healthy part of evangelism. But evangelism isn't just so that people can get forgiven or saved. A huge altar call may represent genuine salvation, but very little evangelism if it lacks faith to produce mature disciples. We can evangelize people into heaven and get them saved. That doesn't mean we've fulfilled the Great Commission to produce disciples. So we have to understand what the good news is really about. Let it break the things that limit us in our conception of God. Let it deliver us from the bad news we live in every day. Let it deliver us from the way we think less of God in certain situations where the enemy accuses Him in our hearts, and we don't have possession of enough good news to war against that accusation. And then we can speak to people and not only get them saved, but show them this magnificent, kind, and good God who loves them and has given His life for them.